Picture this. I'm standing in the employee break room of my own company, wearing a simple janitor's uniform with Marcus stitched on the chest pocket. Watching through a crack in the door is 60-year-old store manager Patricia Williams, this white woman with her silver hair pulled back in that severe bun she always wears. Her navy business suit pressed to perfection. Pearl earrings catching the fluorescent light is absolutely tearing into Jerome, my night janitor, a 25-year-old black man who's been working his tail off for 3 years trying to support his sick mother and put himself through community college. And I can see the tears streaming down Jerome's face as Patricia stands there with her arms crossed, her voice dripping with venom as she says, "People like you are exactly why this company is going downhill. You probably can't even read the cleaning instructions properly." And my heart is breaking watching this young man who's never missed a day of work, who stays late without overtime pay, who treats every customer with respect and dignity, standing there taking this abuse while trying to maintain what's left of his composure. And folks, if you want to see how this story ends, and trust me, you're going to want to see Patricia's face when she finds out who I really am. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and watch till the end because this is going to be one hell of a ride. So here's how I ended up in this situation. 3 weeks ago, I started getting complaints from customers about unprofessional behavior and attitude problems from some of our staff, which was strange because our customer satisfaction scores have always been through the roof. But when I dug deeper, I realized all these complaints were specifically about our black employees: Jerome, Keisha from customer service, David from the electronics department, and Angela from cosmetics. And every single complaint was being filed by the same person, Patricia Williams, our store manager of 5 years, who I honestly thought was one of our best. So I decided to go undercover as a janitor to see what was really happening on the floor level. And let me tell you, what I discovered over the past 3 weeks has been absolutely disgusting, because Patricia has been systematically targeting every black employee in the store, writing them up for things that white employees do regularly without consequence, scheduling them for the worst shifts, denying them break times, and apparently today she's reached a new low by making Jerome cry in front of half the staff. So I'm standing there in my janitor uniform, my hands clenched into fists, watching this woman who doesn't know that Marcus Thompson, the new janitor, is actually Marcus Thompson, the CEO and founder of Thompson Retail Solutions, a company I built from the ground up after experiencing my own share of workplace discrimination 15 years ago, when I was just another black man trying to make it in corporate America. And seeing Jerome's shoulders shake as he tries to hold back tears is bringing back every memory of every time someone tried to make me feel small, every time someone questioned my intelligence, every time someone assumed I was in the wrong place or didn't belong. And Patricia is still going, her voice getting louder and more condescending. I don't know why they keep hiring people who can't handle simple instructions. Maybe you should find a job more suited to your capabilities, and that word capabilities comes out like poison. And I can see Jerome's jaw tighten because he knows exactly what she's implying. He knows she's not talking about his work performance, which is impeccable. She's talking about the color of his skin, and that's when I see Keisha peeking around the corner from the customer service counter. This brilliant 28-year-old black woman with her natural hair pulled back in a professional bun, wearing her standard-issue polo shirt and name tag, and her eyes are wide with shock and anger because she's watching her colleague get torn down for absolutely no reason, and I can see her hands shaking as she processes what she's witnessing, probably remembering her own encounters with Patricia's management style. And that's when I realize this isn't just about Jerome. This is about a pattern of systematic racism that's been happening right under my nose for months, maybe years. And I'm the CEO who's supposed to protect these employees, supposed to create a safe workspace for everyone regardless of race. And I've been so busy in boardrooms and executive meetings that I missed the fact that one of my managers was creating a hostile work environment for every black person on staff. And Patricia continues her tirade. I've been trying to be patient with you people, but there's only so much a person can take. And there it is, you people. The phrase that tells you everything you need to know about where someone's heart really is. And Jerome finally finds his voice, quiet but firm. Ms. Williams, I've done everything you asked. I stayed late last night to finish the inventory cleaning. I've never missed a day. I don't understand what I did wrong. And his voice is breaking because he's a young man who believes in hard work and fairness. who probably grew up being told that if you work hard and follow the rules, you'll be treated fairly. And he's learning the hard way that sometimes the rules don't apply equally to everyone. And Patricia's response is to roll her eyes and say, "Don't give me that attitude, I know your type." Always playing the victim when you can't do the job properly. And that's when I've heard enough. That's when Marcus Thompson, the CEO, has to step in. But I decide to test her just a little bit more. So I walk out of the break room in my janitor uniform and approach them. And I say in my regular voice, "Excuse me, is there a problem here?" And Patricia turns to me with this look of absolute disgust, and she says, "And who are you supposed to be? We don't need another one of you people thinking you can just walk around here like you own the place." And the irony is so thick you could cut it with a knife because I literally do own the place. Every square foot of it. Every employee badge, every cash register, every light fixture, I own all of it. But to Patricia, I'm just another black man who doesn't belong. And she continues, "Security should have stopped you at the door. We've had enough problems with people wandering in here causing trouble." And I'm standing there in my company uniform with my official employee badge clipped to my pocket. And this woman is so blinded by her racism that she can't even process that I might actually work here. And Jerome is looking back and forth between us with this expression of confusion and fear, because he's probably thinking, this is about to get worse for him somehow. And I look Patricia directly in the eye and say, "Actually, I think there might be some confusion here. Let me get my supervisor." And she laughs this cold, bitter laugh and says, "Your supervisor? Boy, I am the supervisor around here. I'm the store manager. And you're about to be escorted out by security." And she pulls out her phone to call for backup while I'm standing there thinking about how satisfying this is going to be when she realizes who she's talking to. And I can see other employees starting to gather around because Patricia's voice has been carrying across the entire store. And there's Keisha pretending to organize the customer service desk while secretly watching the whole thing unfold. And David from electronics has stopped stocking shelves to see what's happening. And even some customers are starting to stare because Patricia's making such a scene. And she's still on her phone trying to reach security, saying, "Yes, we have a situation in aisle 7. 2 unauthorized individuals causing a disturbance." And I'm thinking this woman is so deep in her own prejudice that she's calling security on the person who signs her paycheck. But here's where it gets really interesting because our head of security, Officer Mike Rodriguez, this 45-year-old former police officer who's been with our company for 2 years, comes walking over with his hand resting casually on his radio. And Mike knows exactly who I am because I hired him personally. And he takes one look at the situation. Patricia standing there all righteous and indignant. Jerome with tears still on his cheeks. Me in my janitor uniform trying not to smile. And I can see the moment of recognition in Mike's eyes, followed immediately by confusion as he tries to figure out why the CEO is dressed as a janitor. And Patricia immediately launches into her complaint. "Mike, thank goodness you're here. These 2 individuals are disrupting our workplace. I need them removed immediately." And Mike looks at me and I give him just the slightest nod. And he says, "Ms. Williams, are you sure you want to do this?" And she's getting more agitated by the second. "Of course I'm sure, that's why I called you. Now do your job and get them out of here." And Mike says, "Ma'am, I think you might want to reconsider." And Patricia's voice rises to almost a shout. "Are you questioning my authority? I'm the store manager, these people don't belong here. And if you won't do your job, I'll call the police myself." And that's when I decide it's time to end this charade. So I reach into my back pocket and pull out my executive ID badge, the one with my photo and title clearly visible, Marcus Thompson, Chief Executive Officer. And I hold it up for Patricia to see. And folks, I wish you could have seen the look on her face. It went from smug superiority to confusion to recognition to absolute terror in about 3 seconds. Her mouth literally fell open. Her phone slipped from her hand and clattered on the floor, and she started stammering, that can't, you're..." And I said calmly, "I'm Marcus Thompson. I'm the CEO of this company. And for the past 3 weeks I've been working undercover to investigate complaints about workplace harassment." And Patricia's face went through every shade of pale you can imagine while Jerome's eyes went wide as he realized what was happening, and I continued. "What I just witnessed was a clear case of racial discrimination and hostile work environment creation, and Ms. Williams, your employment with this company is terminated effective immediately." And Patricia starts backpedaling faster than a cyclist going downhill. "Mr. Thompson, there's been a misunderstanding. I was just trying to maintain workplace standards. Jerome is a good employee. I was just having a bad day. But I hold up my hand and say, Ms. Williams, over the past 3 weeks I've documented 17 separate incidents of discriminatory behavior from you toward Black employees, including scheduling discrimination, unequal enforcement of policies, verbal harassment, and creating a hostile work environment. And what I just witnessed was the final straw. And she's getting desperate now. Please, Mr. Thompson, I have a mortgage, I have kids in college. This job is everything to me. And I feel a moment of sympathy because losing a job is never easy. But then I look at Jerome, who's still processing that his janitor colleague is actually the CEO, and I think about all the other employees who've suffered under Patricia's management. And I say, Ms. Williams, you should have thought about your mortgage and your kids before you decided to make other people's lives miserable because of the color of their skin. And I turn to Mike and say, please escort Ms. Williams to her office to collect her personal belongings, then to HR to complete her termination paperwork. And Patricia starts crying now. Real tears, not the crocodile tears she probably expected to work on me, but tears of genuine panic because she knows her career in retail management is over. And as Mike leads her away, she keeps looking back over her shoulder like she can't believe this is really happening. And the whole store has gone dead quiet because word is spreading that the janitor just turned out to be the CEO and the manager just got fired for racism. And I turn to Jerome, who's still standing there looking like he's in shock. And I say, Jerome, I owe you an apology. As the CEO of this company, I failed to protect you and our other employees from this kind of treatment. And I promise you that changes start today. And Jerome, this young man who was in tears 5 minutes ago, stands up straighter and says, Mr. Thompson, sir, I don't know what to say. I thought I was going to lose my job today. And I put my hand on his shoulder and say, Jerome, not only are you not losing your job, I'm promoting you to assistant facilities manager with a 20% raise and full benefits, because anyone who can handle Patricia Williams for 3 years with grace and professionalism deserves to be recognized. And the kid's eyes fill up with tears again, but good tears this time. And he says, Sir, my mom is sick, she needs surgery, and I've been trying to save up for her medical bills while going to school. This promotion, it changes everything. And I'm thinking about how many other Jeromes are out there. Good people trying to make an honest living who run into their own Patricia Williams. And I realize that this company, Axiom USA style stories like this one, happen every single day across America, but we don't always get to see the justice part. And I turn to address the crowd of employees who've gathered. And I say, I want everyone to hear this. This company was built on the principle that everyone deserves respect and equal treatment regardless of race, gender, religion, or background, and if anyone, at any level, violates that principle, they will be held accountable. And Keisha steps forward and says, Mr. Thompson, Patricia has been making our lives hell for months, writing us up for things she lets white employees slide on, questioning our intelligence, making comments about our hair, our speech patterns, our backgrounds, and David nods and adds, she told me last month that I should be grateful to have a job like this when I asked about advancement opportunities. And Angela from Cosmetics says, she moved me to the worst shift and told me it was because customers were more comfortable being helped by Jennifer, who happens to be the only white woman in cosmetics. And I'm listening to story after story of systematic discrimination that's been happening under my own roof. And I realize this isn't just about Patricia Williams. This is about a culture that allowed Patricia Williams to thrive. And I say effective immediately. We're implementing mandatory diversity and inclusion training for all management staff. We're creating an anonymous reporting system for discrimination complaints, and we're establishing a zero-tolerance policy for racial harassment. And then I do something that surprises everyone, including myself. I keep the janitor uniform on for the rest of the day. I work alongside Jerome and the other staff members, and I listen to their stories, their experiences, their suggestions for making our workplace better. And it's the most educational day I've had in years of running this company. And by closing time, word has spread throughout our entire corporate network about the CEO who went undercover and fired a racist manager. And my phone is buzzing with calls from other executives wanting to know how they can implement similar oversight in their own companies. And Jerome comes up to me at the end of the day and says, Mr. Thompson, can I ask you something? And I say, of course, and he says, why did you really do this? I mean, you could have just fired Patricia from your executive office. Why put yourself through 3 weeks of mopping floors and cleaning bathrooms? And I think about it for a moment, and I realize the answer goes back to my own experiences, my own struggles, my own times when I needed someone with power to stand up for me and they didn't, and I say, Jerome, because sometimes you have to walk in someone's shoes to truly understand what they're going through, and because power without empathy is just oppression with a better salary. And he nods like he understands exactly what I mean. And the next morning when I come to work in my regular CEO attire, Patricia's office has been cleaned out. There's a new interim manager who actually treats all employees with respect. And Jerome is wearing his new assistant facilities manager badge with the biggest smile I've ever seen. And when customers ask him about his promotion, he tells them about the CEO who cared enough to work alongside his employees and see the truth for himself. And that story spreads beyond our company, beyond our industry, and becomes a reminder that sometimes justice requires someone with power to step down from their pedestal and see what's really happening at ground level. And every time I walk through that store now, I see employees who feel valued, respected, and protected. And I think about Patricia Williams, who probably tells people she was unfairly terminated by a hypersensitive CEO, never understanding that she wasn't fired for being strict or having high standards. She was fired for being a racist who used her position of authority to make other people's lives miserable. And the beautiful irony is that in her efforts to keep people like Jerome down, she ended up elevating him to a position where he now has the power to ensure that future Jeromes won't have to endure what he went through. And that, my friends, is what real justice looks like. Not just punishment for the wrongdoer, but elevation and empowerment for those who were wronged. And 6 months later, when Jerome's mother's surgery is successful, and he graduates from community college with honors while working full-time in his new management role, I realize that sometimes the best way to change a broken system isn't from the boardroom looking down, but from the floor looking up, seeing through the eyes of the people who need change the most. And that's a lesson every CEO, every manager, every person in a position of authority needs to learn before it's too late. Because there are Jeromes and Patricias in workplaces all across America. And the question isn't whether these situations exist. The question is whether the people with the power to do something about it are willing to take off their executive suits, put on a uniform, and see the truth for themselves.